This Boeing whistleblower was found dead the day after testifying against the company's safety issues. 62-year-old John Barnett worked at Boeing for 30 years until retiring in 2017 and then exposing the company for its dangerous operations. But before John was able to provide evidence for his claims, he was found deceased of an apparent suicide. A lot of people are skeptical about his sudden death and are not completely buying that John took his life. I mean, is it a coincidence that John took his life the same day he had a meeting to speak against one of the biggest companies in the world? Or did something more sinister happen? So let's talk about it. John Barnett was born on February 23, 1962 in Pineville, Louisiana. He grew up in a family with 3 brothers and had 2 nicknames throughout his life, Mitch and Swampy. John was an aerospace engineer, and in 1985 he began working with Boeing in Everett, Washington. And in case you don't know much about Boeing, they are the leading global aerospace company. Boeing develops, manufactures, and services commercial airplanes and space systems for customers all over the world. So to sum it up, Boeing is a huge company. Whenever you take a flight, you're most likely flying on a Boeing airplane, so keep that in mind. In 2010, John was promoted to start working as a quality control manager at the North Charleston plant, where they focused on producing the 787 Dreamliner, which is a specific airplane model. And keep in mind, the job of a quality control manager is to ensure that procedures are up to industry standards at all times. They make sure that everything is consistent, and this is an important job because it prevents room for any type of error. Especially since they're working in aerospace, there should be no mistakes. So this was John's role, and he took this job very seriously and wanted to make sure things were done accordingly before these planes were flying in the air. But John then began to notice some serious inconsistencies that he felt were not addressed by his superiors. And this first started off with airplane parts that were considered defective. These parts were put in scrap bins, but they were going missing. John kept track of these parts since it's important to keep notes on where these parts were going. But one thing everyone knew is that these parts are not supposed to be used on other aircrafts if they're defective. So in 2016, John had brought up to HR that workers were using defective airplane parts to fix or replace other parts on planes. But nothing was being done to stop this from reoccurring. Then, according to John, a senior manager had used a dented hydraulic tube, which was supposed to be scrap. He had this installed on a plane. John again brought this up to a manager, but Boeing said that they investigated this issue and found no evidence that it happened. John's biggest fear was that after installing these defective parts on these planes, there would be a malfunction and something terrible would happen. But his superiors just told him to fill out the paperwork on these missing parts and they'll take care of the rest. But they did absolutely nothing to investigate where those missing parts ended up. John said that the workers did not follow the correct procedures to track these missing parts and would just turn a blind eye, and then he'd find out that these parts were being used and installed on these aircrafts. He claims that Boeing did this because it was more convenient and ultimately they wanted to prevent any delays on the production line. So basically save time and make more money. He said that the company constantly pushed to get new aircrafts built and rushed the assembly process, which meant that safety was compromised most of the time. Now get this, John was also told by his superiors at Boeing to stop writing emails to express his safety concerns and instead to have face-to-face conversations with managers or HR. So what does that tell you guys? He then realized that the company didn't want any of his claims written on paper, so they can't use that as evidence that John never spoke up about these issues. If something terrible were to happen, Boeing did not want to be liable for it. At this point, John was suffering from PTSD and anxiety attacks because he was one of the few that refused to cut corners, and because of that, he was labeled as a troublemaker and subjected to a hostile work environment. The company is so annoyed because John is constantly complaining. So because of this, they decided to transfer him to another part of the plant. It's even been said that John's name was at the top of a list titled quality managers to get rid of. So they wanted John gone at this point. By 2017, John decided to retire early because of the constant harassment and gaslighting he experienced at work. He was always so stressed and anxious, which caused a lot of other health issues later on. And his doctor even told him to leave his job or he was most likely going to have a heart attack. So he retired and then moved back home to Louisiana. But mentally, John was not okay, and he was still concerned about what was going on in the company. Everything he found out, it was still in the back of his mind, so he decided to pursue legal action against the company. And the urge to speak up only became more intense when he began hearing about all the malfunctions and crashes Boeing planes were experiencing.
It was a brand new model called the Boeing 737 MAX 8.
They didn't understand the danger that they were walking into.
What started out as routine flights quickly became a pilot's worst nightmare.
The plane had flown into the sea, at full speed.
With 2 airplanes down and 346 people killed, by 2019, Boeing becoming the focus of a global firestorm.
In 2018 and 2019, there were 2 plane crashes within 6 months of each other. In October 2018, a Boeing 737 crashed 13 minutes after taking off, killing 189 people on board. It was later determined that the plane malfunctioned and went nose down, and pilots were trying to fix the position of the plane, but they were unsuccessful and the plane crashed. Then on March 10th, 2019, again a Boeing 737 flying from Ethiopia to Kenya crashed soon after taking off, killing 157 people on board. So that's 2 plane crashes less than a year apart. They were told to suspend all flights until they investigated what was going on. Then on January of this year, do you guys remember when that door came off of a plane in midair? Well, this was a 737 MAX, a plane that Boeing makes as well, and this happened about 20 minutes after the plane took off from Portland on its way to Ontario, California. Luckily, no one was sucked out of the plane because everyone had their seatbelts on and the plane was able to land quickly. But this incident only drew more attention to the company, and people were really questioning their safety. During this incident, federal authorities and the National Transportation Safety Board launched an investigation and found that 4 bolts were missing and the plane was due for maintenance. Then, when they inspected other planes, they found dozens of issues, such as bolts and other parts of the plane weren't tight enough. So again, John did speak out against Boeing in 2017, and in 2019, he spoke to the New York Times about quality issues at the Boeing plant where he worked. He basically went into detail about everything regarding the safety issues and their lack of proper maintenance, also how he directed these concerns to his superiors and they decided to do nothing about it. He also told the New York Times that many of these oxygen systems on the 787 jetliner may not work because of the faulty parts installed on these planes. And this is crazy, but he said that there's a failure rate of 25%, meaning that 1 in 4 oxygen systems may not even work in a real emergency. That is so scary to even think about. And he even admits that he's yet to see a plane leave the plant that he'd say is safe and airworthy. And according to the Federal Aviation Administration, Boeing failed 33 of 89 product audits that the agency conducted related to the manufacturing of its planes. Now, this legal battle started in 2017, but in 2024 is when a deposition was scheduled. So this is when everything is picking up and they'll eventually approach the trial date. John was permanently living in Louisiana after he retired, but he was asked to go to Charleston, South Carolina to be interviewed about the case. He drove from Louisiana to Charleston to attend these meetings and stayed in a Holiday Inn near where the deposition would take place. He started the deposition on March 8th of this year, and this is where his legal team would be asking him questions as well as being cross-examined by Boeing's legal team. Now, this is where things take a turn. The next day on March 9th, John was supposed to meet with his lawyers again at 10 a.m. to undergo more questioning, but he didn't show up. After some time, they called his cell phone, but he did not pick up. So John's lawyer then asked the hotel workers if they can check up on John in his hotel room. John was not in his hotel room, but then they noticed his orange pickup truck was still parked in the parking lot. When the hotel workers approached this pickup truck, that's when they found John deceased. And according to the Charleston County Coroner's Office, John was found with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Yeah, I don't know if I believe that. There was also a note beside him that we still don't know what that note says, but when his attorneys found out about this, they were shocked. His attorneys came forward and said that John never gave any indication that he was going to take his own life. Instead, they said that John was in really good spirits and excited to complete a deposition against the company, and that he was really looking forward to just putting all of this behind him and move on. Then Boeing released this statement: "We are saddened by Mr. Barnett's death and our thoughts are with his friends and family." When people found out about John's death, everyone had so many questions and were speculating the obvious. What are the odds that this man who was speaking against one of the biggest and richest companies in the world ends up dead? Now, these are some important points that you guys may find interesting. Before John passed away, he told his lawyers that he felt like people in the company were spying on him. Then one of John's close friends was interviewed, and she said that one day she was speaking to John about the lawsuit, and she asked him if he was scared that something could happen to him. And John said no to her, but if something were to happen to him, it's not a suicide.
He did not commit suicide. There's no way. He wasn't concerned about safety, because I asked him, I said, "Aren't you scared?" The way he would talk, "No, I ain't scared." He said, "But if anything happens to me, it's not suicide." You know, I know that he did not commit suicide. There's no way. He loved life too much. He loved his family too much. He loved his brothers too much to put them through what they're going through right now.
And he basically told you not to believe it.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Not true. He's got too much to do, likes breathing. And he did. He had a lot of plans of things that he wanted to do.
What do you think happened?
I think somebody got in there and made, money can buy anything nowadays, it seems like. And there's a lot of evil in this world.
Just so eerie that he said this to her right before his mysterious death. John had a lot of plans for his future, and this is just very out of character according to his friends and family. But just because John is dead doesn't mean that they're not moving forward with the trial, which is set to happen in June of this year. I truly think that John did not do this to himself and that there are other people involved in this. I'm not saying that Boeing did it, and like I said, what are the odds of this happening literally right when he's going through this process against Boeing? They just wanted the problem gone, and they kind of succeeded on that. But we'll see what happens with the trial in June, and I really hope that they keep investigating his death, because it just doesn't make sense. But that is it for today's video. Let me know what you think happened to John, and let me know if you really think something more suspicious is going on in this case, and I'd love to hear your comments. Other than that, that is it for today's video. Make sure to like this video and subscribe. It really helps me out, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.